Good morning, this is the Dutch homestead, and I'm here in the early morning. You see my laundry hanging on my curtain rails, and here below you see my hay box. I'm very sorry about the quality of this video. It's a little bit, yeah, not on high quality, it's yellow because it was so early and my camera doesn't pick up the light that best during the morning. So here you see me grabbing my whole wheat flour. So I have a big bucket of whole wheat flour, and I will mention the exact amounts I use in the section below, but I have once did a very handy job of measuring out on scales how many of what ingredients I need and measure that within this kind of cups so that I know exactly the ratio between the whole wheat flour and the flour, etc. So I haven't that much of an issue with having the scales out and things like that. So this is the last little bit of my flour. So I use actually 2 parts of whole wheat flour and 1 part of a regular flour. But as you can see at the end, I don't really come near the required half a cup of regular flour. So I squeeze it out, but yeah, there's just nothing more in that bag. And I spill a little bit, but yeah, here I just throw in what I've got, and I will add more later on during the mixing. I always like to do this later on. Once it is mixed, you can far more better judge if it needs a little bit more water or it needs a little bit more flour. And I almost always end up with adding more flour. So here you see me use a big bag of salt. This is sea salt, and I just use 1 tablespoon of salt. And then I will walk back from the camera and grab my yeast. I always have that yeast in my fridge because that in that way it keeps longer, and I always have it in this small container. I keep the rest of my yeast in the freezer. So in minus, what is it, 10 freezer, to have it be active longer. And a little bit of oil, I don't measure it, it's just yeah, 1 or 2 tablespoons. And this all goes into my mixer. And actually what I've learned, I have done a real course in baking bread, and the lady that taught me how to bake bread said to me that the baking machines are very, very well in combining the ingredients, like you see it doesn't do here. But actually the baking part is most of the times not that good. And yeah, you'll add up with a little bit funny looking loaves with in the middle a big hole because of that iron bit that swirls it around. So here you see I always manually try to help my machine. I don't know if it's really called helping, but I'm sure that's not really allowed according to the technical specifics. But yeah, it's indeed something I like to do also because I bake a very small loaf. If you can see that, I don't know. But yeah, my loaf is less than 500 grams. So therefore, it sometimes has a bit of difficulty twirling it around, and I just like to do it and help it a little bit. And it's a little bit like watching the washing machine. Actually, it's just a fun thing to watch, to be honest. So yeah, here it swirls things around, and here I have it beeping that it's actually done with the kneading part, and then I always take off the plug and let it just have its first proof in this machine itself, because it does start to warm the elements of the oven part also when it's mixing. And so I just have it 30 minutes waiting in this machine, and then I grab it out and place it on the kneading board. Or actually, I more throw it there. And what I've then do is I'm going to do this au bain-marie, so with a big pot with water, and in that pot this pot will end up. And even though you would say, well, it's not really baking then, it's more cooking, it does stick to the edges of the pan or the pot here. So I always like to cover it a little bit with oil so that it doesn't stick that much. So here I just have it a little bit oiled, and then I grab a little bit more flour. This is whole wheat flour, and yeah, you could do it also with regular flour, but I, as you could see, was running out of it. And so I just press it down. I make sure that all the air bubbles are mostly pressed, and then I just grab it and knead it a bit to make it into a ball. And you see that it's here a small ball, but it does fit in my pan, and this is right the amount that I need to have it double in size once it's in the pan, and then I can start to cook it, but you will see that later. So here I grab all the little bit of crumbs that left behind on my kneading board, and I just swirl it around, get it good covered, and have a nice firm ball, and that I then throw into the pan and place on the lid, and that is just waiting here in the pan. And I'm now showing something completely different that I like to do, just to draw a little bit. But yeah, I want to show you that I then do other things that I like, and yeah, I don't really bother looking at it. I almost always have it waiting there, proofing for a second time, about 1 or 2 hours. And yeah, then I have it ready for the rest section. So here you actually see my haybox. So it's a very random kind of box I made myself. And here you see indeed that my bread is nearly doubled its size. And so here you see me grabbing hot water. Actually, it needs to be very warm water. And then I fill up my jug with this hot water. I know that 1 full jug is sufficient for my pan and will not overflow the little pot that it's inside. And here you see that my pan, and I will show you, is a little bit damaged in the bottom. So therefore I now use this cloth that I made out of an old piece of linen, and I fill it up so that indeed the bottom will remain to and get no more scratches further than what it's already done. And then I really carefully fill it up with the rest of the water. The water shouldn't be able to get into the other inner pot, otherwise it will have you have soaky bread. And so here I then place my big pot on the stove, and I will have it cook for first to get it to a boil, and then I will cook it for 10 minutes. And in the meantime I will show you this hay box. So it actually doesn't contain any hay. I have a little small cushion which I always tuck under the handle, then a big cushion made out of feathers both, and then I have yeah, a long elongated part that I can wrap around the pot, and it's filled with these styrofoam balls, so that's very easy to wiggle around each size of pot. So that's actually very convenient. I and never envisioned that it would be so helpful to have this um, three parts. So this is the other part that I just tuck then around the pot, and I can therefore have multiple kind of pots that are different in size. And below there's also a cushion filled with these styrofoam balls, because that's very handy to have at the bottom, because the feathers will just be pressed down too much, but the styrofoam balls will not. And so here, yeah, you see how it's made up. So it's a very simple box covered with that silver lining. I don't know if it really is effective in this way, but it works. So I don't mind. And so here you see me tucking it again a bit pressed, because this is the biggest pot I have, and yeah, any bigger pot will not work. I have here the sound also of the pot, but you can't really hear it. I now do notice that it's really getting to a rolling boil, and therefore I place this on that boil for 10 minutes. And after that boil, I'll place this big pot into my hay box, snugly around with the cushions, and then tuck in this little cushion below the lid, so that indeed no air bubbles can be the cause of temperature droppings. And then I do need to press this down quite carefully. There's always feathers flying around. They just manage to get out of this cushion. And then with an elastic band, I tuck it away. And actually, I just leave it be. It's now, I believe, 2-3 hours later. It doesn't really mind, but you do need to have it at least 2 hours, I would say, in this hot pot, so that it can indeed cook and yeah, have good baked bread. So indeed, this is quite hot, so I almost drop it there. My dad came around and had coffee, so therefore the coffee are there. And I'm sorry that it is indeed, my bread isn't really nice, because it did stuck to the lid, and therefore, yeah, it did have a big hole in the middle. Not my most perfect bread while showing you this. And then I always use this back part of the wooden spoon, so that I can release it and just drop it out. It's always a good thing to wipe away any water, otherwise you get soaky bread, and you don't want that. And here you see actually the bread. So yeah, it's not the best version I ever created, but you can see that it's just risen. And if I just now cut it down, you do see these yeah, the regular way of how bread should look like, I think. And it really tastes nice, and it's nice and hot. And I actually like it not having that crumb, because it doesn't have a very strong crust. But yeah, I like it that way. It doesn't. It does taste well. So thank you for watching, and I would like to see you next time. Bye bye.